I can't continue in this marriage. I'm done. My lawyer will send the divorce papers soon. My status has changed. I've moved up, and I need someone who matches my class.
I have been a good wife to you for 3 years of our marriage. Was that why you ignored all my calls and text messages?
And I need someone who matches my class. Someone smart and beautiful. Becky is that woman.
James and Blessing had been married for 3 good years. While their life together hadn't always been smooth, they managed to make it work. Money was tight, and dreams were constantly deferred, but they held on, at least Blessing did. She loved her husband deeply, despite the quiet sacrifices she had to make. Blessing was a plus-sized woman. She had always been on the heavier side, but her heart was warm, and her spirit resilient. James never complained, at least not openly. He used to say, "I married you for who you are, not for your size." And that was enough for Blessing. They shared laughter, whispered prayers, and simple hopes. She believed they were just perfect for each other. One morning, James received a call that lifted the cloud that had hung over their home for months. "Honey, I've been called for an interview," he exclaimed, clutching his phone with excitement. "For the contract application?" Blessing asked, her eyes lighting up. Yes, this could be it. Blessing embraced him tightly. "Honey, don't worry. You will win the contract. God will surely make a way for us." She held his hands and offered a short but heartfelt prayer. "Father, go before him and let this be the beginning of a new chapter. Amen." James responded loudly, his voice filled with hope. He kissed her on the forehead and walked out the door, shoulders high and full of anticipation. Days passed, and there was no word from James. Blessing tried calling, no answer. She sent messages, each more desperate than the last, but none delivered the response she sought. Then, like a dark whisper in the wind, someone hinted that James had been seen at a hotel in the city, with another woman. Blessing's heart dropped. She didn't want to believe it, but something inside urged her to find out for herself. The late-night whispers, the missed calls, the strange absences, too many red flags to ignore. With trembling hands, she hailed a cab and handed the driver the address she had received anonymously, praying silently that it was all a misunderstanding. That somehow, someone was playing a cruel trick on her. That James, her James, wasn't capable of betrayal. The cab ride felt like an eternity. Her stomach churned with each passing streetlight. As the car pulled up to the hotel, a cold sweat broke out across her back. She stepped out slowly, almost afraid her worst fears would be confirmed. At the reception lobby, she scanned the area, her heart pounding in her ears. Then she saw him. James. Laughing. Holding hands with a young, slim, and flashy-looking woman in a red dress and towering heels. The woman clung to his arm as if she belonged there, as if she had always been there. "James." Blessing's voice came out in a shaky whisper, barely audible. Yet somehow, it stopped him in his tracks. He turned around, a flicker of surprise on his face. But it was gone in a second, replaced by indifference. "I've been calling and texting you for days," she said, her voice barely holding together. "Hope all is well. Did you get the contract?" Before James could answer, the woman by his side stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she sized up Blessing. "Who is this, James?" "This fat woman," she sneered, the words slicing through the air like a whip. James said nothing. He didn't even flinch. "Is she your maid or something?" Becky continued, her tone dripping with disdain. Blessing's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled. Then James spoke. His voice was flat, emotionless.
"I can't continue in this marriage. I'm done. My lawyer will send the divorce papers soon. My status has changed. I've moved up, and I need someone who matches my class." Someone smart and beautiful. Becky is that woman.
It felt like a knife had been driven into her chest. Her knees nearly gave way, but somehow she remained upright. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks as James and Becky brushed past her, still chuckling, whispering like she had never mattered. Like she had been nothing more than a shadow in his past. As she stood in silent devastation, trying to hold herself together while the fragments of her heart scattered at her feet, a voice broke through the heavy fog around her. "Blessing. I'm so sorry. I saw everything." She turned, startled, and met the eyes of a tall, well-dressed man who stood a few feet away, looking at her with genuine concern. His voice was warm, steady, the kind you'd expect from someone who truly meant their words. "I'm sorry, but I don't know you," she said, hastily wiping away her tears, trying to compose herself. "I'm Peter," he replied gently. "Your old neighbor. We grew up in the same compound." Her eyes narrowed as she studied him more carefully, trying to place the familiarity in his face. Then it clicked. "Peter. From Mackin Street." He nodded, smiling softly. "Yes. I recognized you immediately. You haven't changed much. You've always had that calm grace. If it's because of this contract that James is treating you this way, don't worry, I'll see what I can do. Come, let me take you home." "I don't have a home anymore," Blessing whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with pain. Peter paused, then stepped closer. "Then come to my place," he said sincerely. "But what about your wife?" she asked cautiously, the last thread of pride still intact. "What will you tell her?" A small, almost sad smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "I'm not married," he said simply. Reluctantly, Blessing allowed herself to follow him out of the hotel. He led her to a sleek black SUV that gleamed under the streetlights. The doors clicked open with a soft hum, and soon they were driving in silence. Blessing sat quietly, staring out the window, her mind racing with thoughts of betrayal, confusion, and a strange sense of relief. When they pulled into Peter's compound, her eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't just a house, it was a mansion. Grand, elegant, and pristine. The exterior shimmered beneath the dusky sky, surrounded by neatly trimmed hedges and security lights. Inside, the house was even more stunning. A grand chandelier bathed the foyer in warm light. The floors gleamed, the air smelled like fresh roses and cinnamon, and every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in a luxury magazine. For the first time in hours, Blessing let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Relax. I'll fix something for us to eat," Peter said warmly, already heading toward the kitchen. But Blessing shook her head gently. "No, please. Let me. Cooking. It helps me feel grounded. In control." It was the one thing that still made sense to her in a world that had just crumbled beneath her feet. Peter nodded and stepped aside, watching as she moved through his pristine kitchen. The space was elegant, marble countertops, soft under-cabinet lighting, and appliances so modern they looked like they could cook the meal themselves. She opened a few drawers and cabinets, getting familiar with the layout. That's when her eyes landed on a book tucked beside a spice rack. She pulled it out, expecting a cookbook, but it was something more. The glossy cover read "Reclaiming You," meal plans, detox recipes, and daily movement. Inside, it featured structured diet plans, light workouts, herbal remedies, and pages dedicated to slimming teas. There were even journal prompts and motivational quotes. Intrigued, Blessing flipped through it. Peter walked in, drying his hands on a dish towel, and saw the book in her hands. "Ah, that one? I bought it for my mom," he said with a smile. "She was even heavier than you. But she followed the plan, stuck with it, and lost a lot of weight. It changed her life, her health, her energy, her confidence." "Do you have a picture of her?" Blessing asked, her voice quiet but curious. Peter pulled out his phone and tapped around until he found the photo. It was a dramatic transformation. His mother looked vibrant, radiant, and healthy. Blessing stared at the image, her heart stirring. That night, as she cooked dinner with Peter by her side, something inside her shifted. For the first time in a long time, she made a decision just for herself. The journey was far from easy. The diet was strict. No sugar, minimal carbs. The exercises made her muscles ache in places she didn't know existed. But Peter was there every step of the way. He worked out with her, tried her green smoothies, and cheered every small victory. "Look at you," he'd say with pride. "You're glowing." And she was. Months passed, and the weight slowly melted away. Her clothes hung looser, her eyes sparkled with new life, and a quiet confidence returned. More than anything, she felt at peace, with herself, with her past. One evening, as they sat sharing a quiet dinner, Peter reached across the table, took her hand, and said, "Blessing, will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Yes." Soon after their engagement, Blessing began accompanying Peter to high-profile social events and elite gatherings. No longer the woman who once wept in a hotel lobby, she carried herself with poise and quiet strength. At one such gala, a night shimmering with elegance and attended by dignitaries, celebrities, and business elites, Blessing turned heads the moment she stepped in. She wore a stunning, flowing red gown that hugged her new figure gracefully. Her skin glowed, her smile radiated confidence, and her aura commanded attention. As they walked hand in hand down the aisle of the grand ballroom, all eyes followed her. The murmurs weren't of judgment or pity anymore, they were of awe and admiration. Then, from the corner of her eye, Blessing saw them. James and Becky. But they weren't the same. Becky's once vibrant features looked drawn and weary, her makeup barely masking her fatigue. James looked thinner, his face tight with stress. The sparkle of success that had once made him so arrogant was gone. They stopped in front of Peter and Blessing, clearly stunned. "Your woman is beautiful," James said awkwardly, his eyes lingering on her with a mix of disbelief and regret. Peter smiled, calm and confident. "Thank you. But she's not just beautiful. She's also the same woman you abandoned, the one you left behind without a second thought. Your ex-wife." James stiffened. His face turned pale. "Wait. Blessing," he whispered, stunned. Blessing met his gaze evenly. "You thought I would fall apart," she said softly. "But God gave me a real man. One who saw my worth." James opened his mouth to speak, but Peter stepped in smoothly. "And about that contract you were awarded, we've seen no deliverables. If it's not completed in a month, you'll need to refund the full amount. From now on, you report directly to Blessing." James looked as though the ground had fallen from beneath him. The very next working day, James arrived at the office, humbled, nervous, and clearly desperate. Gone was the arrogant man who once mocked Blessing. Now, his eyes were sunken with worry, his once confident posture slouched under the weight of consequences. "Please," he said, standing before Blessing's desk. "I need more time. Just a little extension." Blessing, seated in her executive chair with calm authority, looked at him steadily. Her expression was composed, but firm. "The 1-month grace period is more than generous, James," she replied. "Any further delay will trigger legal action. We have protocols. This is business." James nodded, swallowing hard, but the panic in his eyes gave him away. He left the office scrambling to rally support from investors and former allies, but doors that once opened freely now slammed shut. He had burned too many bridges, and worse, he had misused the contract funds trying to maintain a lavish lifestyle and impress Becky with cars, jewelry, and vacations. When he finally confessed the truth to Becky, her response was swift and cruel. "I thought you had money," she snapped, folding her arms. "If you're broke, I'm done." Without a second thought, she walked out on him, cold, final, and unapologetic. At the end of the grace period, James submitted incomplete documents in a last-ditch attempt to salvage the project. But a company audit uncovered glaring discrepancies and clear evidence of misappropriated funds. Blessing submitted a formal report, and Peter made sure that legal action was initiated. James was forced to liquidate nearly all of his assets just to cover the company's losses. Months later, on a sunny afternoon filled with joy, Blessing and Peter were married in a breathtaking ceremony surrounded by friends and well-wishers. As she walked down the aisle, glowing with grace and happiness, it was clear she had risen from ashes. And together, they lived happily ever after. Thanks for watching. Kindly like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Drop your thoughts about Blessing's journey in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Like and subscribe.